Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So today we are talking about Totem, which is a brand that I have been observing from afar. I found it really interesting how this brand has made its way onto the list index, which is this list of trending brands, trending products that have gained hype and popularity on social media. So I thought, why not talk about the brand today since there is more interest in it. I truly have only ever purchased 2 items from this brand, and it's been a while. I want to say 4 years ago, I purchased those very popular zippered leggings that have the split zipper. I'm not gonna lie, I was very influenced. They are really nice actually. And then I had also purchased one of those PJ top, this black trim that kind of looks like a pajama top. I didn't find that to be that good quality. Now granted, I think it's supposed to be like a pajama top, so maybe it's meant to be something that you wear as sleepwear, but the material on that wasn't really sturdy. It was very nice, very soft, but it wasn't really sturdy. But after that experience, I kind of was turned off from the brand. In all honesty, with that product, I didn't really use it, I think, the way that it should have been intended to be used. But I think I should revisit this brand. I really do. I have yet to try their handbags. They have been gaining a lot of popularity on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube, many different platforms. I've seen this brand. Had a lot of people tell me in the comment section how much they love this brand. But just a little bit about the brand. Totem was founded in 2014 by Swedish couple Ellen Kling and Carl Lindman, both of them who have very unique backgrounds in fashion and media. Ellen Kling was a well-known fashion blogger, influencer, editor, and she was a major voice in the Scandinavian style scene. And she had earlier launched her clothing line in the 2010s called Nowhere, and then she had collaborated with major brands like H&M, also guest by Marciano. Carl Lindman, her partner, who eventually became her husband, had a background in marketing and working as a former art director, so they really combined their expertise in fashion, media, and design to create Totem, which has gained a lot of recognition for its very distinctly minimalist approach. So I thought we'd go through key moments and points that really defined the development of this brand, why I think it's really popular, as well as their design aesthetic. Ellen Kling and Carl Lindman launched Totem with the vision of creating this very Scandinavian, timeless approach to fashion. Totem is a fashion house rooted in Swedish sensibilities, modern aspirations, and the notion of style. With an appreciation for women's many roles and how pieces are worn in practice, we create emblematic designs with an emphasis on materiality and shape. Archetype pieces are examined through a female lens and realized with sumptuous fabrics, rich textures, and graphic silhouettes, representing a direct and decisive way of dressing. The collections are contextualized in curated edits, visuals, and spaces. Over time, they had attracted the attention of people that have more of a minimalist design philosophy, but I think on a global scale, being able to be sold at major fashion outlets, especially with the rise of these online retailers, be it Net-a-Porter, Farfetch, when there was Matches Fashion, Totem was sold on these platforms, as well as you could buy it in major department stores. I know in Canada, you can buy Totem at Holt Renfrew, also Saks, other department stores as well. But the brand became known for these very versatile pieces that embodied that Scandinavian simplicity, that had that very distinctly Scandinavian design approach. What Totem also did was they really developed key signature pieces, key wardrobe staples, be it their oversized wool blazers, their coats. I remember first seeing a lot of tailored denim, distinctive scarf coats, and of course I've talked about the pajama shirts and those split leggings. But yes, they had a lot of pieces that were very in line with the Scandinavian design approach, proposed a more elevated silhouette, and these core wardrobe essentials became the foundation of Totem's collections, epitomizing everyday luxury. And I think another aspect of Totem is when we think about them as a minimalist brand, I definitely see there is a connection with Scandi design. I think about in the 2010s, a brand like Acne Studios, which used to embody this style, has actually gone in a totally different direction, but they kind of became the main brand known for this design aesthetic, that Scandi minimalism. There are other brands as well, by Melina Berger that have also gone through more so structural changes in different ways, although I feel this brand is also on the rise as well. But I think Totem became the brand that became synonymous with Scandi minimalist fashion. When we think about Scandi minimalist design principles, we definitely see this here. And in terms of how would Scandinavian design be described? Well, I found this quote from Linda Galloway. Scandinavian design is not overly thought, it's not overdone, it's just intentional. It has this natural blend that feels approachable. It's a nice blend between styles. Oftentimes people would think it's about being a blend of a bit of mid-century modern and a little bit of modern, but then there's this warmth to it. I think it's a very approachable design that is easy to love. Simple but not careless. Whenever I think of like Scandinavian design, I think fashion and functionality exist together. There is this emphasis of everyday wearability, everyday usability that can work across multiple contexts. And again, functionality is not a compromise of fashion and vice versa. It's about really good design. Even just when I look at Scandinavian interiors, they have a lot of natural tones, be it like woods or stone or wool. Even in the materials they use in their fashion, there's a lot of wool, there's a lot of linen, natural materials, silks, highlighting, I think, the texture and warmth that comes from these natural materials. And I think it just adds a more of a tactile dimension to very simplistic designs. They're very much inspired by nature, using earthy tones, earthy elements, organic shapes that evokes this connection with the outdoors. And I think that this is also reflected in their fashion. While I wouldn't say I have like the Scandi style or even like my interiors or anything about me is Scandinavian, there are elements about this design style that does appeal to me. I would even say as a Canadian, my house does not look like this, especially with a 3-year-old. Definitely does not. But there's something about the warmth, the natural materials, those tactile textiles, and that overall feeling of, I think, serenity that is very appealing to me. Honestly, if I were to give up my handbag obsession, it would probably just be replaced with furniture. And of course, when we're talking about Scandinavian design, they really embrace this idea. I am totally going to mispronounce this. I think it's called hygge. I'll include the name on the screen here. But it's this idea of comfort and relaxation. Their clothing also embodies this idea. The fits are very relaxed. The clothing is meant to be very comfortable. There is a sense of warmth, a sense of ease, be it in their like oversized, cozy knits, coats, soft layers that promotes a sense of comfort and well-being. I also want to talk about how they've really expanded their retail presence. And I think with this wave of designers, when I think about brands that focus on timeless fashion, there is an interest in making connections with interior design with a lot of these brands, be it with a brand like The Row, right? Their Instagram, a lot of it is art and interiors. The Kate store, her husband is an architect, so it's beautifully thought out. Totem is one of these brands that has also put a lot of thought and intentionality behind their stores and how the world of these brands are created within the store experience. And even just in these past couple years, Totem has really expanded. If we look at their flagship location in Stockholm, it's very intentional, it's very inviting. It's meant to feel like instead of a big shiny box store, it's meant to feel like you're going inside of a townhome. There is both a sense of intimacy as well as an ode to their Swedish heritage, featuring local art like Anders Krissar, Karl Miles. I do apologize if I mispronounce those names. I really love these chairs by Andrea Putman. She's a French designer. You see how these black and white chairs, very signature of, I think, the Totem palette. When I look at Ellen Kling's style, even if we just look at their black and white theme from their fall winter 2024 collection, we even see that reflected in these design choices. We have these coffee tables from Mark Newson. And again, these coffee tables feel actually a little bit more futuristic. He's more of, I would say, a designer that takes on elements of that biomorphic blobist style that was really popular in the early 2000s, but in this kind of setting adds something fresh, futuristic. It's done in a very harmonizing way with these French chairs here. In London, they talked about in Design magazine how it was very important that they keep their Swedish heritage, and they worked with Stockholm studio Halleroed. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And this design studio has been known for working with other Scandi brands like Acne Studios, Byredo, Axel Arigato. With Totem, you really see how they captured the essence of Totem in their stores. They were very much inspired by the 1920s and 1930s, what was called the Swedish Grace era, which is a very romantic period. It was often about elegance and refinement. You see that with certain pieces, this Swedish Grace pewter mirror from the 1930s, as well as they picked out vintage armchairs and a coffee table designed by Otto Schultz, as well as they have this sculpture by Carl Mills by the entrance. But then they also have this really interesting steel sofa by Mark Newson. Again, this sort of futuristic biomorphic shape adds an element of interest to this very clean, minimal space. And they have 14 stores, so I could go down a list and talk about all of them, but on the list index, one of the points about why they were on this list was because they had a store opening on Madison Avenue, and the store opened on the last day of New York Fashion Week. They have 14 stores globally, so that is quite impressive. While this brand hasn't taken on that traditional marketing route with like having a big celebrity in front of every product, celebrities have worn their products, like Sophie Turner on her day off, things like that. I personally really remember seeing this brand not because of celebrities, but it was because in the late 2010s, it really caught the attention of that wave of fashion YouTubers that were doing things like unboxings from places like Net-a-Porter and Farfetch. From these multi-brand retailers, they were known for very timeless, well-made pieces that had very signature design elements. That's what really helped expose this brand on a level that I think if they just went the traditional going in department stores kind of approach, it may not have been as successful. There was, up until the end of the pandemic, these kind of online multi-brand retailers, they were really in this kind of boom period, and they really capitalized on that. It is also important to note how Ellen Kling was also an early online fashion blogger. She has a pulse when it comes to online influence, what the girlies are buying. She gets a sense of that. But it is also important to note that there was a setback when they had a lot of their product in matches fashion, and they lost something like £1 million that they will unlikely get back. And this was mentioned in the Financial Times. What is interesting is in the recent years is they've really ramped up their retail presence due to the rapid decline of a lot of these multi-brand online retailers, as well as I think people wanting to go in store and experience a store and having an experience to give the customer. And for Totem to continuously grow, this is part of their strategy. And while they are a Swedish brand, both of the founders, they actually used to live in New York. That's where they actually came up with this idea of the brand. And it wasn't until they had their daughter, then they decided to move back to Sweden. When this store on Madison Avenue opened, I had several of you guys mention this store to me. For the design of the store, they have this spiral staircase in this very bright scarlet red. They also feature a lot of works from Swedish artists. This Anders Krissar titled Half Girl bronze sculpture. There's an oil painting by Ralph Hansen. There's also walnut chairs by Matt Thieslius. Their stores are just inspiration for if you are a lover of Scandinavian design or Swedish design in particular. The world of this fashion brand is also articulated through the interiors and the design, from often the color schemes to the types of materials used. While we have our social media very online world, and while we have these online stores, I do think the importance of the physical store where people can go in, see what's in store, also try things on in this post-pandemic world. I think there's a way at which a lot of these brands have to be able to differentiate their experience with the secondhand market. There is something increasingly more important about brands being able to create an experience, something memorable, and I think there is a power in beautiful interiors. I don't think storytelling is limited just to how a brand looks on the runway, how catwalk is done. Totem had gone a decade without having a proper runway show. They had things like lookbooks, and they had a social media page while they would be present in online retailers. But the importance of having their pieces in physical retail stores was very important, and I think it helped build the world and really articulate the design philosophy behind this brand. And I say all that, but another reason why Totem was also on the list index was because they had their most recent runway show, the Spring/Summer 2025 collection. They had it at New York Fashion Week. Again, it took them 10 years to get to this point to be able to have runway shows do it in the way that they felt confident about, because obviously these runway shows are very expensive. I think they're at this brand where they can invest in the type of fashion shows that they want at a pace that is right with their brand. And from this article from the Financial Times, they actually had mentioned how this brand has become a $100 billion brand. That is hugely impressive, and that has even increased even more so in 2024. It is also important to note that a Swedish investment fund in 2021, Altor Fund, acquired a minority stake to support Totem's international growth, in particular their expansion to various stores. But Ellen Kling and Carl Lindman are still the majority stakeholders. This was a brand that was started in 2014. I do think there was an interest in minimal fashion, and I think minimal fashion always comes in different waves, and it will stay for a little bit and then it will go as like the popular style. But I would say in the early 2010s, with I think the rise of Instagram, there really was this moment towards minimal fashion. When I think about even like Phoebe Philo's Old Celine, there is definitely a huge influence of Phoebe Philo's Old Celine here. Definitely not the same price point, and I think that's a key distinction. Been very consistent with their approach to design. They're sticking to that Swedish form of minimal fashion, even through periods of maximalism and logomania, dopamine dressing, waves like that. They've always stayed really true to the core values of their brand, and they're really doing it in a way to build up their brand for the long term. And this from the Financial Times: "It was common sense in many ways," says Lindman. "Our vision was, we have very limited funds. How do we do something we believe in that sells? And hopefully, if that sells, we can build a slightly bigger collection, and hopefully that sells." They were profitable from the first collection, which included the Annecy, a loose, long cashmere coat that is still one of their best sellers. "We've been going very much step by step," says Lindman. "The product was so important because if we didn't sell the product, we would just run out of business. Looking back," says Kling, "they took a lot of risks because they didn't know any better. But the fact that there were always two of them meant it was easier to push each other along. Plus, I can always blame things we do wrong on Carl. You know, the result is that it's been a steady growth like this since day one," says Kling, who quotes a compound annual growth rate of 80% over the past 7 years. "The brand has almost opened a 50-50 mix between direct-to-consumer and wholesale. At first, people asked why would they sell to major stores like Net-a-Porter. Lindman has no such hesitations. We want to learn from them. We want exposure, and we think they're great for brands, so why not be there with them?" And again, this is a reminder that while they've had a little bit of a moment this past quarter, this is something that they've been working on for a decade. This is about having really good products that people want to buy, but also getting the business side right, being sold at key retailers, and having major influencers. Like I remember seeing Rosie Huntington-Whiteley and Jasmine Tookes, those kinds of gals that have more of that quiet luxury style, right? Of course, I remember seeing influencers like Tamara also wear this brand as well. It's definitely been a slow and steady wins the race approach. One thing I think that has really helped them grow as a brand, like many brands today, is their popularity on social media. The brand's very relaxed, comfort focused, but very elegant style has attracted more people. Coinciding with this is the rise of their handbags. Now, they had the T-Lock bag, which is a very beloved bag that I think we started really seeing in 2022. Again, Katie Holmes famously wore this bag, as well as other fashion figures as well. But I think this dipped in look with that very minimal T, at least this sort of like dipped in thing, is something we're still seeing in fashion in 2024. And I think once the brand had this handbag, it's really hit a good stride. While they have their scarf coats, their split leggings, their blazers, that became very popular. When you have that kind of it bag, that can really elevate a brand to a whole new different customer base. And according to the Financial Times, last year in 2023, Totem sold 16,000 of these T-Lock bags. It is a little bit more reasonable in price point. It just hovers over $1,000 US. That is not a bad price, especially when you consider how a lot of these luxury brands during the pandemic, the prices skyrocketed, and it's now come out that certain brands, from at least what has been allegedly reported, use sweatshop-like conditions. I read this article from the Business of Fashion, and it spoke specifically about the rise of Totem, The Row, and Kate. They offer this, quote, high fashion sensibility. In addition to that, when we think about these luxury conglomerates like Kering, LVMH, what's happening right now is there's this major creative director shift. They change out creative directors every few years, and the critique is that they often hire a lot of the same guys, the same names we are seeing over and over and over again. There is something appealing about buying into an emerging designer, supporting a designer that has taken the risk and challenged themselves to build something. And I think in this climate, we're seeing this massive popularity negativity around Coach as well that's happening. A lot of customers are turned off by some of the prices that these luxury brands are demanding, and the quality, the design, the creativity isn't really there. And in fact, when I look at the T-Lock bag, I can already count like 5 luxury brands that have copied this style in 2024. Their prices, I don't want to say, I wouldn't call them cheap, but they are, I would say, under, when I think about brands like The Row, and then I would probably put Kate under that. I would put Totem under a brand like Kate. It's not as expensive as The Row, it's not as expensive as Kate, but it still has a very distinct point of view. It doesn't feel like it's a knockoff of other brands, maybe similar to like a La Mer in price point, maybe slightly above APC. There is a place in this market. You don't want to buy a bag from The Row, but you want something better than Cause, even slightly above APC. That's where I would probably put Totem. And I think what's so fascinating is when we look at all of these brands that often get compared to each other. The Row, Kate have like a very New York perspective. If I think of more minimalist French brands like an APC or an Officine Generale, very quintessential Parisian minimal approach to fashion. Or if I think about Japan, a brand that has been rising recently is Orly, or even just like Muji. Or even how there are brands that kind of have like an East meets West approach to the style, La Mer or like a Setchu. I think this genre of fashion is actually just evolving into different niches and filling the void for different customers, right? Because at the end of the day, not everyone can afford The Row. Not everyone wants to also buy into Cause. So I think this is kind of that like nice middle ground. When I think about Scandi fashion, of course, there are brands like Philippa K and by Melina Berger. I actually think of Totem as one of the leaders in Scandi minimal fashion. I would actually go as far as to say, even in this whole world of very niche world, but this whole world of minimal fashion, I would say that Totem is probably one of the leaders and definitely is a brand I want to revisit again. Anyways, guys, that is my video. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.